gonna be great, high-level match for sure, and I'm gonna kick his ass. That's 100%.
And entertainment, but I wouldn't say that had anything to do with like social change or any important topics. I think the name was just the same as the one from the Beijing King, match, and that's it. Like there were no more similarities because I feel like women's tennis stands on its own right now, and we have so many great athletes and great stories to present. We don't necessarily need to compare to men's tennis. It's a totally...
Iga Świątek has finally spoken out about Aryna Sabalenka's so-called Battle of the Sexes match, and she absolutely did not hold back. Her comments were sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The world number 2 made it clear that, in her view, this event had nothing to do with social progress or elevating women's tennis. Instead, she described it as a publicity stunt, a spectacle created to generate headlines rather than drive meaningful change in the sport. In what many are calling a subtle but unmistakable critique, Swiatek pointed out that the only thing this match shared with Billie Jean King's historic Battle of the Sexes was the name. And she has a point. When Billie Jean King faced Bobby Riggs in 1973, it wasn't about entertainment, it was about equality. That match became a defining cultural moment, symbolizing the fight for equal respect, equal pay, and equal opportunity for women in sports and beyond. It transcended tennis and helped fuel the broader women's rights movement. By contrast, Swiatek suggested that Sabalenka's exhibition felt more like an attempt to stay in the spotlight, a strategic move to keep her name circulating in the media rather than a genuine effort to push the sport forward. Her critique wasn't just about the event itself. It seemed to question the motivations behind it. According to Swiatek's perspective, spectacle-driven matches risk shifting attention away from real competitive achievements and toward theatrics. What makes her argument even stronger is the broader point she raised. Events framed as Battle of the Sexes don't necessarily unite fans. They can create division. Instead of celebrating the excellence of both the ATP and WTA tours, they highlight gender differences in a way that can overshadow the beauty and competitiveness of the sport as a whole. In short, Swiatek's message was clear. Tennis grows through authentic competition and respect, not staged rivalries designed for headlines.
Compared to men's tennis, it's a totally different, story, and I think, honestly, there doesn't need to be any competition, I think actually events like this one, United Cup, brings tennis all together, and WTA fans and ATP fans can watch this event.
EGA specifically highlighted the United Cup as an example of how tennis should be bringing people together. In competitions like the United Cup, men and women compete side by side for their countries, supporting each other, celebrating each other's victories, and representing the sport as a unified force. That's the kind of event that moves tennis forward. That's the kind of competition that shows the world that men's and women's tennis can coexist and elevate each other.
So much excitement, seeing also singles players that usually don't have space, to play mixed doubles together, playing this kind of matches. I think this is actually what makes our sport much more interesting.
Instead of bringing the tennis world together, Sabalenka's so-called Battle of the Sexes match appeared to do the opposite. It fostered an us versus them narrative. It reignited comparisons that many believe don't need to be made, and reopened debates the sport has spent years trying to move beyond. From this perspective, Swiatek's indirect criticism feels justified. At its core, critics argue the match served no meaningful social purpose. It didn't advance equality. It didn't elevate the women's tour. Instead, it became a spectacle, a sideshow that diverted attention away from actual competition and the genuine issues facing professional tennis. If you want evidence of why it was labeled divisive, just look at the reaction online. The comment sections, tennis forums, and social media threads following the announcement and aftermath were filled with heated arguments. Rather than celebrating skill or sportsmanship, much of the discourse centered on gender comparisons. People debated whether men could beat women, questioned the legitimacy of women's tennis, and resurrected tired arguments that have lingered for decades. Ironically, This is precisely the type of conversation Billie Jean King's historic 1973 match was meant to settle, not revive. What made the situation more controversial was the promotional buildup. Sabalenka didn't just agree to participate, she actively leaned into the narrative during media appearances. On talk shows and interviews leading up to the event, she presented herself as a genuine contender capable of competing with top male players at the highest level. In one especially headline-grabbing moment, she directly called out Nick Kyrgios, saying she would kick his ass if given the chance. While competitive trash talk is nothing new in sports and can even add entertainment value, many felt that comments like these intensified the gendered framing of the matchup. Instead of focusing on tennis as a shared sport, the narrative increasingly revolved around proving superiority. And that shift in tone is exactly what critics argue made the event so polarizing. Those comments were not taken lightly by many male athletes in the tennis world. What Sabalenka may not have fully considered is that her bold declarations didn't just apply pressure to one opponent. They placed a spotlight on the entire men's tour. These weren't casual, throwaway remarks meant purely for entertainment. They were statements that, intentionally or not, challenged the perceived hierarchy and competitive structure of professional tennis. When a matchup is framed around gender, every word carries extra weight. Confidence in sport is admirable. Athletes should believe in themselves. But claims of dominance in a gender-focused showdown create a scenario where the fallout becomes complicated no matter the result. If she lost, critics would use it to reinforce old stereotypes. If Kyrgios lost, it would immediately trigger questions about the men's tour. Either outcome risked fueling controversy rather than celebrating tennis. The true impact of Sabalenka's trash talk became evident when Nick Kyrgios addressed the situation in a pre-match interview. He revealed that he had received messages from several top-tier male professionals urging him not to lose. Pause and think about that. Some of the best players in the world felt compelled to weigh in, reminding him what was at stake. That alone highlights how quickly an exhibition match transformed into something symbolically charged, something viewed not just as entertainment, but as a matter of pride and reputation for an entire tour. And that level of tension is exactly why many believe the event sparked more division than unity.
I know that, there's a lot of pressure. I've had a couple male tennis players already message me.
Kyrgios later admitted he understood just how intense the pressure had become. This wasn't a routine exhibition anymore. It had turned into something symbolic, almost a referendum on men's tennis itself. Sabalenka's bold statements had raised the stakes far beyond a single matchup. Whether intentionally or not, the narrative shifted from individual competition to a broader gender-based comparison. For some male players, it felt less like hype and more like a challenge to their professional standing. And that's where the irony becomes difficult to ignore. Many male players have publicly supported women's tennis. They've advocated for equal prize money, praised the competitiveness of the WTA Tour, and consistently spoken about respect and equality in the sport. Over the years, there has been visible solidarity between tours. But rhetoric that frames a match as a gender showdown risks straining that support. When the storyline becomes men versus women, rather than athlete versus athlete, even natural allies can feel pulled into unnecessary conflict. What could have been a celebration of talent becomes a battleground of pride. Then came the match itself. And the result unfolded much the way many analysts predicted. Nick Kyrgios won in straight sets, decisively. It wasn't a tight contest or a dramatic thriller. It was comprehensive, clear, unambiguous. For Sabalenka, it was a tough and very public defeat. After the pre-match bravado, the confident interviews, and the heavy promotion, being outplayed so convincingly amplified the scrutiny. But the consequences went beyond one player. The outcome quickly became fuel for critics who already question women's tennis. Instead of focusing on the broader growth of the sport, some voices used the result to reinforce old, tired narratives. That's what made the situation especially frustrating for many observers. The match, rather than elevating women's tennis, inadvertently handed ammunition to those who seek to diminish it, allowing them to say, "See, this proves our point," even though one exhibition cannot define an entire tour or the quality of women's competition. And that, perhaps, is the heart of the controversy. The spectacle created headlines, but it also risked undoing years of progress in how the sport is perceived for critics. The aftermath felt predictable. The result gave ammunition to people who were already eager to dismiss the WTA Tour. It reinforced narratives that many within the sport have worked hard to dismantle. The truth is, most male players avoid making cross-gender challenge statements, even jokingly, because they understand the dynamic. These matchups are usually no-win situations. The physical differences between elite male and female athletes are well documented. Acknowledging that reality doesn't diminish the extraordinary skill, intelligence, athleticism, and competitiveness of women's tennis. It simply reflects biological distinctions, not value or legitimacy. But when you promote a match with fiery, gender-framed trash talk and then lose decisively, the optics become difficult to control. It risks creating a narrative that critics can weaponize. Highlight clips get replayed. Social media turns moments into memes. And unfortunately, those moments can linger far longer than intended. Sabalenka remains one of the most dominant and accomplished players on the WTA Tour. Her achievements stand on their own. But many observers feel that agreeing to this particular spectacle and promoting it the way she did was a strategic misstep. That's why some believe Swiatek's criticism carried weight. From that perspective, the match felt less like progress and more like a publicity stunt, something that stirred division rather than unity. When Billie Jean King played her historic 1973 Battle of the Sexes, it was about social change and the fight for equality. It symbolized a cultural movement. This modern version, critics argue, was driven more by headlines than history and ultimately backfired. Now the bigger question remains, what do you think? Was Swiatek right to criticize the match? Should cross-gender exhibition battles even happen in today's tennis landscape? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more in-depth tennis drama and analysis. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.